Hi everyone, my name is Victoria Main. We're here for another episode of TV and Film Focus, and I'm very excited today. I've got with me Philip Gilpin Jr., who is the director of the Catalyst Content Festival, coming to Duluth very shortly.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, October 9 through 13, correct?
Yep.
So let's start with the very basics.
Yeah.
This festival is almost 15 years old, correct?
Yeah, this will be the 14th festival, and our 15th birthday starts November 1.
Nice.
Yeah.
And you have been previously, now this started in LA. Can you give us a little background on kind of the trajectory that got you to Duluth a little bit?
Yeah, it started in LA in 2006. I didn't found it. It was started by a husband and wife team, AJ and Jenny Tesler, who are television producers and were also at the time. I was working at HBO at the time in LA, and we had a mutual friend that invited me to go. And the thing that I immediately found the most interesting about the festival, which at the time was called ITV Fest, the Independent Television Festival, was the very opening event that I heard was a talk about how they thought that television and the internet were going to be the same thing one day soon. Because if you flash all the way back to 2006, YouTube had just become a website, and Facebook was just becoming publicly available beyond colleges, and we hadn't entered the notion of television and streaming and all of that yet. So they were very forward thinking in that regard, and the purpose of the festival originally was very simple. It's, if you're a television creator, at the time in 2006, you had no place to go if you had a TV idea and didn't know somebody in the industry. There wasn't a publicly open, meritocracy-based organization that would filter through all the ideas, figure out which ones are best, and make industry introductions for those people so that their shows could move and careers could move forward. Film has had that since the late 70s with Sundance and Tribeca and others. Sure. But on TV, this was the creation of that type of a process. So it was in LA for 7 years. I called up AJ in 2012 and asked him what was going on with the festival, and he said that him and his wife were thinking about, options for it. And I said, well, I'll take it over, and we'll move it out of Los Angeles, and we moved it to the mountains of Vermont. Yep, in 2013. And the purpose for that move is really simple. Television is fundamentally different economically from film. In film, it's finite. Most projects are finite. You get to know people on a set or a crew, you shoot for a finite period of time, it ends, you go on to your next job. The producer goes and tries to sell the film and makes money and takes the profit and makes their next one, and away they go. With television, you're pitching an idea and you're asking somebody to work with you for what could be a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. Look at Law & Order. How long has that series been on the air? Right. So television is much more open-ended. And because of that, it's fundamentally a relationship-based industry. So we wanted to take the festival out of a busy place like LA and move it to a place where people had a retreat getaway where they could just hang out for the week. And instead of us meeting each other and going, oh, are you an agent? Oh, I'm a writer. And what do you do? And what can you do for me? It was, oh, hi, I'm Philip and you're Victoria, and let's grab a beer. And oh, it's foliage, pretty, let's go hiking. And you get to know each other. And then it turns out, oh, you're a writer and I'm a producer. We should work on something. So that is the basis for not only Vermont, but also why we ended up in Duluth.
Okay. And you looked at a lot of different cities, I understand.
We did. Yeah. So the number one question we always get in Duluth is, why did we end up in Duluth? The answer was pretty simple. When we were in Vermont the last 6 years, we were growing at a very rapid pace. The first town we were in Vermont, called Dover, Vermont, we were there for 4 years, and it only has a population of about 900 to 1,100 people, which is quaint, it's beautiful, it's lovely. But the festival infrastructure outgrew it, so we moved up the mountains a bit to a town called Manchester, Vermont, that had some more theaters and infrastructure. And after a couple of years in Manchester, we started to realize that the organization was growing beyond a 5-day festival. Creators wanted educational programming year-round. They wanted classes. They wanted professional development retreats. But most importantly, we were getting asked the question by the creators, can I move and live and work and produce in Vermont? Because LA and New York are getting too expensive. And I went to the state and the powers that be there and said, all of these young people, creative young people that are in a very money, there's a lot of good jobs in production. It's a money-based industry. They are asking me the question of, can they move and live and work in Vermont? And to our surprise, the answer was that the state and local powers were not interested in supporting the TV and film industry moving to the state. So even after all the years of bringing people in and the money and all that, so I said, okay, that's your prerogative, but we're not going to stop growing just because you say no.
Right.
So I'm going to go on the road, and I'm going to find a place that has a laundry list of, a wish list, right? I wanted a state that is familiar with TV and film industry and would say yes to bringing production and incentives back to the state. I wanted to keep the remote, rural, retreat getaway style of the event. So I wanted a place that wasn't a major city. But I wanted a place where the airport was within a half-hour drive radius of the hotels, and a place that had hotels, and a place that had restaurants, and a place that had really great theaters, because when we were in Vermont, we were literally building tent theaters on grass lawns and on tennis courts for the most part. So I had this infrastructure wish list of having what I guess you could call big city infrastructure, but in a small town arts community. And then I wanted a place that had a variety of locations so that producers, when they come in, they could say, oh, there's a rail yard there, but there's a shipyard there, but there's a lake there I could shoot as an ocean, and then, I can go up to the hill to the forest, so that we could pitch to producers, well, you could shoot a film or a TV show that has 7 different locations, and you could find 5 of those 7 right here in town. You can see where I'm going with this.
Right.
So we went to Ohio, we went to Missouri, I obviously came to Minnesota, there were a few other places in between, and nowhere had the combination like Duluth.
Wow. Well, and one of the things you said and what you were just sharing with us is something I wanted to hit on, and that is the idea that, what you're proposing here is, and what you're doing is more than just a content festival that lasts for 4 days. You're talking about an ongoing presence here with an educational aspect. So tell us a little bit about that part of it.
Sure, yeah, that is the number one takeaway that I always want to make sure people know, which is this is not an event. Our organization, we're a 501c3 arts organization. We're a nonprofit that's focused on discovering and advancing the best narrative production artists. By narrative, I mean television format, podcast, script, whatever it is. And that requires us to be educational, professional development, all kinds of training. But most importantly, a lot of Hollywood, those people weren't born in LA or New York. Most of them are from the Midwest or the South or elsewhere, and they had to go there because that's where the jobs were in the industry that they wanted to work in.
Sure.
If a place like Duluth and a state like Minnesota stood up and said, you don't have to leave, or come on home, you can do that now in the digital technology age of television and film. Mm-hmm. And that's the goal. So, for the extreme example, in terms of what is our end game here, what are we looking to do? The absolute perfect outcome would be landing a huge television series that films here for 10 years. A Breaking Bad like they did in New Mexico, a Game of Thrones like they did in Northern Ireland. Those types of a series would employ more people than Cirrus does in a Duluth throughout the years.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes the amount of jobs, just the blue collar union trade jobs, the hundreds and the thousands of them that are required on a television series, sometimes just is a fact that isn't known by a lot of people.
Sure.
Who just go home and click on Netflix and watch TV.
Right.
So that is really what we are. When we talk about why we think that Duluth and Minnesota should support our organization, it's not because we're dumping a couple $1 million into the town over 5 days, which we are through the festival. It's keep your eye on the prize of bringing an entire new industry into town that rivals any other major industry that Duluth and Minnesota already have.
Yeah. Well, and so as you know, whenever you launch a new industry, there's a certain kind of infrastructure that you need to support that.
Right.
And talk a little bit about kind of, how we grow that industry and what's the infrastructure that we're going to need to support that.
Yeah, it's a great question. And while not everything is here, we discovered over the last few months there's already more here than we had previously thought. Well, when we arrived here last year, we started looking around for, are there any studios around? It turns out there's one up in Chisholm already. There are a couple of great properties here in Duluth that could easily be renovated into studio space. You have spaces like these. You have all the theaters in town. Duluth's got, an amazing arts theater reputation. The big thing that we thought was missing were going to be the professional crew. And for us to pitch Duluth as a place for a production to come in, their first question to us would be, well, is there a statewide tax incentive? Because other states have incentives, and we're working on that. And then the second question is going to be, great, if there is an incentive, how many of my crew and equipment do I have to fly in, because that gets expensive? And the more I can hire local, the better. I'm going to say that part again because most people won't hear that right the first time. These productions want to hire local. They don't necessarily want to bring in 300 people and house them and feed them. They want to hire local, so they save that money. And we went to St. Louis County, we went to IRRB, we went to the city of Superior, we went to economic development folks up in Lake and Cook County, and we said, here's the dream. The first step is we have to put together a resource guide of what's already here. So at least we had to take a census. What do we already got? And the community organizations said, yeah, let's take that census. And they put together a couple $100,000 for a team of people we hired local. And they spent the last few months going out and going to as many communities as they could in St. Louis, Lake and Cook counties and over in Superior, and finding all of the people and companies that already exist here that would be useful on a production. Hair and makeup, carpentry, plumbing, electricians, drivers, caterers, set design, whatever it is. Yeah. And to our delight, we found hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of existing people and businesses who not only did they have the right type of business and skill sets, but a lot of them had already worked on productions that had been up here in the past. Sure. So that resource guide has been put together. It's being printed as we speak, and it'll be handed out to all these producers and television folks that are coming to Duluth in October. And that should be the first moment that the industry says, wait a minute, there's more to this place than just this beautiful theater and a cool 4 days. Yeah. So, well, that'll be... Boy, I hope I'm there at that moment. It'll be a fun moment.
Yeah, when people, wow, these people aren't messing around.
Exactly.
And I will be at the festival, so I'm looking forward to that moment. Yeah. But when you talk, so you're talking, I mean, this is actually a new industry, to a degree. I mean, as you know, there's been plenty of productions in the state and folks have been involved, but this is launching it on a whole different scale. So in addition to, having the festival and trying to create that environment where production folks can stay where they're from. Mm-hmm. You kind of got to have an educational pipeline there to train those folks, right? So we want skilled professionals and not just the ones that are here now, but we want more to come after them. Right. So you guys have partnered with St. Scholastica, is it? So talk a little bit about the educational side and sort of the story, what do you call it, Story Road?
Story Road.
Right.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So for those who aren't familiar, there's all the jobs on production are basically divided into two sets. It's called above the line and below the line. Above the line are all of the creative writers, directors, actors, producers who are specific to that project, meaning, on a television show that gets known for its main actor, that person's an above the line responsibility. Same thing with the directors and the writers and the people that make the show. The below the line, those are all of the crew that are behind the scenes. And we need both. We need both of those components to be trained. The state and the city that did this really well over the last decade was Atlanta, Georgia. And I'm not too familiar with why and how they decided to do this, but I know that the outcome obviously has been amazing, which is about 10 or so years ago, they decided they were going to compete and make the TV and film industry massive in Georgia. And they went out, they made the incentive program. But in addition to the incentive program, the heart of it was they made the educational programs that you're referencing. And what these do is with St. Scholastica, we're starting a quarterly process where people, the above the line creative folks, can come and learn how to develop their series from an idea in their head to an actual pitch deck, How do I actually get this out of my brain? And what is the professional, quote unquote, right way to present this to an agent or a producer?
Yep.
And then after you've got the pitch deck, then there's going to be courses about how to actually write the script. And then once you've written the script, there are courses about how to actually direct and produce and get that on set. And we take you through the entire process. And then simultaneously, we're talking with partners at UMD and LSC about having trade skill labor programs for people who are currently electricians to take that skill set and learn how to do that on a film or TV production. Right. Carpentry, same thing. So that way we can say we have both the above the line and the below the line components, and that there is a training ground here. Because the bottleneck that happens that a lot of smaller states and locations will run into is if they make a great incentive program and they attract let's say a big Disney feature. Well, that one feature could eat up all of the existing really good crew in the entire northern half of a state for 8 months. Now, all of a sudden, you can't have a second film that tries to come in and shoot at the same time because they have to wait for that first one to finish before these people are available to work again.
Right.
But if you have enough of a crew base that you can handle 3, 4, 5 productions at once, I mean, then sky's the limit. Then you're talking big bucks.
Well, and a pipeline to keep funneling those,
right.
Training those folks and getting them working.
Right.
So, so let's talk a little bit about, we know that the economic impact of this is large, but there may be, can you explain to folks a little bit about how that economic benefit, the different ways in which that comes?
Sure. Yeah. No, it's a great question because I know that sometimes our industry can seem very disconnected from reality, not just with the shows that are on screen, but how it actually impacts on the ground. So the 5-day festival itself, from the surveys that we've done over the last 6 years, we know that on average, anybody who's attending the festival will spend about $1,000 in extra money on whether that's hotels, restaurants, shopping. That's just free money being put into the community. If we were to not sell another ticket as of today, there'd already be 750 people that would be here for the week. Obviously, we're assuming that the Duluth and local people are going to buy their tickets at the last minute, and everybody will show up, and we encourage everybody to show up. On that note, one of the main takeaways is this is meant to be for Duluth, about Duluth, by Duluth, and Superior, and the whole region. This is not something where we're trying to have our tiny little industry convention and we don't want to be bothered. We want everybody to come participate. So please come out and say welcome, because the more that these producers and creators feel welcome here, the more likely they are to bring their business here. So there's that festival money, call that whatever it is, $1 million or whatever, great, free money for the community. And then when you start getting into the production realm, medium or small production and the TV side of things, they'll spend $1 to $3 million per episode for a 30 to 60 minute episode. That's small. Medium range, you're looking at maybe 3 to 5, 3 to 6, and then once you get to 6 up, then you're talking the big bucks and the big shows. But that's per episode. So if you have a series that's shooting 10 to 20 episodes, you're now talking hundreds of millions of dollars that will be spent. There have been a number of studies out there, just to go back to the Game of Thrones reference, about the 9 figures that they spent in Northern Ireland, and they completely changed the economy of a country over the course of the last 10 years, never mind just a state.
I believe that.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where, there's a lot of talk in Minnesota and in the Northland region about economic development for how do we retain the youth that's already here? How do we bring in new jobs that are green jobs, that are good paying jobs? And how do we keep the existing unions and guilds employed? And all of these factors, and there's others that people will talk about, and sometimes it pops up in a conversation about mining, or it talks of, in all these other ways. Sure. Well, this is a significant, this can be as significant a part of the answer to that equation as the local community decides it wants it to be. The one thing that myself, our organization, and I know that most of our industry hates is to try to force itself on a place that doesn't want it, right? We don't want to be considered the Hollywood outsiders that are coming into a small town. No,
Right.
it's meant to be a community thing. So that's why it's important to have everybody show up in October and just sit in the theaters and watch some shows and say hi to some folks. Say, welcome to town.
And that actually brings me to another of the things I wanted to clarify for folks. And that is, there are a number of ways for local people to, anybody who has an interest in the industry at all, whether you have any experience at it or not, to participate in this festival.
Yep.
So you've got all kinds of different so talk a little bit about the different ticketing options that people have. Day pass, week pass, blah, blah, blah.
Sure, yeah, you can show up just for the day. I think the lowest one's $30 for the day. And the way that price is set is our programming runs from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m., so there's 7 hours of content there. And the average ticket price to go to the movies is about $10 an hour nationwide. So if you multiply that out, 7 hours would be $70 for the day. Well, we assume you're not going to sit in a theater for 7 straight hours. Maybe you do 3 or 4 of them. So that's how we got to the $30 a day. And I know that that's different from other events that are around town, because I could, homegrown or other events that happen. Maybe you buy, tickets by the hour or by the show or things like that. You don't necessarily buy them for the day, but this one's different. And then it multiplies out to, you can buy it, it's $140 for the week if you wanted to do every day, Wednesday through Sunday. There's a locals discount. Use the promo code, it's MNLOCAL online, and that saves you some cash there. But these shows and these artists that are coming in, the local community here gets to see them before the rest of the world sees them on television. Now, some of these might have already been put up on YouTube here or there, but they're not, for the most part, widely known. Duluth gets to become, if it wants to be, the place where TV people around the world can start saying, oh, you won in Duluth? We know that your show is good because it was watched by the locals in that region. Like, it almost becomes the filter. And the notion that there are maybe other festivals or, TV is a big industry, right? And I hear the question all the time, there's got to be other ways that these shows and artists are being discovered. It can't just be through Catalyst. It's not just like, how many other TV festivals are there in the country? Less than 5. And there's only a couple that allow anybody to submit. Most of them have kind of rules and regulations that you already have to have a network credit, or you kind of already have to be in the game of it.
Right.
It really isn't a large group out there. And that's how unique an opportunity is. There isn't a TV festival like this in Los Angeles or New York. And one of the things that we've done over the last few months is, with our partner at WDSE, we started doing educational programming. And we already started some of those classes back in August that we were referencing. And one of the people that came and taught those courses with us was Serena Catania, who is a producer and a photographer. But one of her past lives, she worked at the Utah Film Organization, and back in the 70s. And the governor at the time back then said to her and her group, well, we want to think up some ways to bring more film production as an industry into Utah. So she loves to tell the story about how she said, okay, we'll think up some ideas. And they were in a meeting one day and she said, well, why don't we start a festival for film? And the US Utah Film Festival was born, and it went by for a few years, and it was very small. It was a startup thing in Salt Lake that eventually moved to up the mountains a bit to Park City. And they, after a few years, they partnered with another organization that was out there called the Sundance Institute. And the Sundance Institute was educational and a retreat getaway for creators, started by Robert Redford and some other folks. And they got together and they said, well, this festival's starting to get some legs. We have this Hollywood celebrity and people here that are in the same physical geographic area. Why don't we work together? And in the early 80s, the Sundance Film Festival was born out of that. But for those first few years, and when Serena has been here in Duluth a couple times, she's very much reminded me that what Duluth is like now and what Catalyst is kind of starting to grow out of, that beginner phase into that intermediary phase, very much reminds her of what happened with Sundance in the early 80s. And it was the rocket fuel that propelled it from another small community event into being what it is today. Yes, the partnership with Sundance, obviously, but then you had the state of Utah and local communities continue to support it by writing huge checks throughout the 80s and 90s. And even as recently as 2015, I think I saw that the state of Utah gave Sundance a $500,000 grant. So it was that community partnership, and all the pieces came together.
Well, and it's, it's difficult to quantify the kind of economic impact that Sundance has had on that region, because it's absolutely huge.
Well, they send out a report every year. They estimated at about, I think the last one I saw was $110 million over 10 days. And that's kind of the end game, for any
And that's
festival.
just the festival.
That's just the festival. That's
right,
not
any of the educational stuff they do, which is copious and.
Yeah, those reports are online. They're public. If I'm, if
Yeah.
I'm getting the numbers a bit off, but you can read them.
Well, and it's almost like Duluthians have an opportunity to be a test market, if you will, for
TV.
for new content,
Yeah,
which is really exciting.
it is. And, I hope that the explanation of the different ways in which Duluth can choose to look, if Duluth's like, yeah, we're good, we just want the 4-day festival convention, okay, it can choose to just support and do that. But if it says, no, we really love these educational components, let's start doing that, okay, well, we could add that layer on. And then if it's, oh no, we want to have producers and people here year round, and we want those jobs, and we want to retain the youth, and we want the extra tax money so we can keep redoing the roads, and we can, that option is currently on the table.
Right. Well, and from what I had some other guests in my last guests for this show, Bodie Werner and his mom, Claire Cooley. And one of the things they were talking about that I really loved is that, Catalyst has already really invigorated the creative community, even before anything's happened.
Yeah, that's cool.
So in a way, you've had some success already.
Oh, good.
At least for a lot of us, it feels like it's very much support for an active creative community. But now all of a sudden there's this bigger thing.
Yeah.
Which is looking to take everything to a new level and let people do what they want to do and actually make a living at it.
That's exactly what we say at the end of most of our talks when we're explaining what Catalyst does, which is somebody will ask us, to sum it up in one sentence, and we just say, let artists be artists. Like, that's the point of our organization. And what we need to do right now, not meaning in 2020 or 2021 or in a couple years down the road, literally in the next 30 days through this festival, is let both the industry, people that are coming in, and let everybody here in Duluth and Minnesota know this is the flagship. This 5 days in Duluth throughout the year, throughout the world, this is the anchor point. All the educational components and everything else will come from that, but we're not looking to move again. We're exhausted with them. We grew so quickly, and one of the reasons we chose Duluth was we won't have to move again. We can grow here and not fear running into those boundaries again.
Well, I'm delighted. I know that lots and lots of people in the creative community and lots of people in the business community and local officials, everybody's tremendously excited about it. I hope this ends up being your forever home.
Yes.
It's the puppy we really want. Thank you so much, Philip, for coming by.
Thank you.
And see you in a couple weeks.
2
right?
weeks from today.
2 weeks from today, Catalyst Festival. Buy your pass, come and see the stuff, shake some hands.
Thanks.